Hey everyone, Penguin Style here again. Today we're going to be talking about 5 bullet heaven games to play if you like Vampire Survivors. Now obviously Vampire Survivors is the father of the modern day bullet heaven genre. We'd like to give you a couple alternatives. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. If you want to switch to another game that plays out similarly. So the first game we're going to talk about is probably the second most popular game in the genre. It's called Brotato. Brotato is a pretty minimalistic game in the sense that you play in a small arena as a little funny 2D potato. There are 30 plus characters to choose from, all that play out pretty different. Between waves, you collect resources that you can use to buy new weapons and passive buffs. I think this one has a lot of staying power. It has a lot of different characters, there's achievements, there's just a lot of unique builds that work for this one. It is developed and published by the company Blobfish, that have also made and published Space Gladiators and Lost Potato. Currently, Brotato is being bundled on Steam with a couple of different games, including Heretic's Fork, 20 Minutes Till Dawn, and the next game we're going to talk about, which is Halls of Torment. Halls of Torment is a more recent release in this genre, and it does play out similarly to Vampire Survivors, in that you run around and become stronger, which gives you more projectiles and things to kill the endless waves of monsters. But it's aesthetic, it's actually more reminiscent of a Diablo 1 style game. This one brings a little bit to the table with the different characters that it has, including my favorite, which is the Exterminator, who uses a flamethrower. It also has an equipment system where you can get different items that you can equip, like boots and helmets that give you passive buffs, like critical chance and damage up. It also has this system where you can send legendary rare equipment through this well, to make it so that they can be purchased and used in later runs. I thought that was a unique take on this that I hadn't seen in any of these games before. Halls of Torment has been very successful since it's been launched by developer and publisher Chasing Carrots, which is responsible for games such as Good Company and Cosmonautica. Like I said, Halls of Torment is being bundled on Steam with Brotato right now if you want to get a couple of these games together, if you feel like trying them out. The next bullet heaven I would like to talk about, if you're looking for something new, is called Bioprototype. Now, this game isn't quite as well known as some of the other games on this list, but I think it's actually got some really interesting things to offer. First of all, I think it is slightly easier to complete than some of the other games on this list. I never really thought that this one had a huge difficulty spike. It does have a good collection of characters that play out semi-differently, but I think the unique call for this game is that your weapons / power-ups are these different organs, like limbs and vessels, that you have to actually combine, like kind of like a puzzle coming out of your membrane to give you different buffs that change depending on what order you put them in. And I thought that actually gave this one an interesting twist on the genre. It definitely plays out slightly different, while still obviously being a bullet heaven. It is developed by Mprom Game, which has also developed Elder Chaos, and the publisher is BD Games, which recently released Gaia Trek. Another lesser known game in the genre is Boneraiser Minions. Boneraiser Minions plays out similarly in that it is a top-down 2D game where you fight off waves of enemies, but this one is slightly different in that it isn't actually your character that's doing most of the combat. Whenever you level up and get to choose a new item, it's actually a different type of minion that have different synergies and different attacks, and then the minions swarm around you and they fight off your enemies, while mostly your character is just there to not die. There is some spells that they can get, which lets you affect the gameplay a bit, and there is also a character that technically absorbs the powers of the minions so that the character themselves is fighting, but otherwise you have these unique minions that you collect and upgrade, and they're actually the ones fighting off, which is a different take on this. Boneraiser Minions is developed and published by Chaos, which put out games such as Skelly Celeste and Spirit's Abyss. The last alternative bullet heaven we'd like to discuss today is actually the one that I have the most hours in of any of these games, and that's Soulstone Survivors. In Soulstone Survivors, it is not a top-down 2D game like most of the rest. It's a more isometric 3D take on this, where you are one of several mages. I think there's like 15 characters, and there are different elements that they get. Some attack with physical weapons, some do more like spells. And there's a lot of different synergies you can do with debuffs on the enemies, such as burn, slow. There is one that causes wound. There's also skill trees that can give you different passive buffs that you can unlock. Each character has a couple different weapons that gives them a starting ability. This one I think plays out pretty well. It has a ton of achievements. I believe it has about 250 achievements because there's difficulties and leveling up with each of the characters. This one has a lot of bosses, so there is a lot of things going on the screen at once, which can make it a little bit hectic. The developer and publisher of this is Gamesmithing Limited, which Soulstone Survivors is their first game, but they're putting out a similar game that's supposed to be the same art style, but a roguelike, and that is going to be called Rogue Soulstone, so keep an eye for that one as well if you're interested in these guys. So that's going to do it for us here today. I hope you've learned of some new and interesting bullet heavens that you can play if you want to switch it up from Vampire Survivors, and there's a ton of these games coming out all the time, but these are a few that we've tried and experienced. Hopefully you guys will give these a try. Give them a try. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you next time.